the turnaround time for an article or a radio news piece in traditional journalism is about a day, sometimes less. But in Bellingcat, it can take many months to do this piece of research.
Welcome to Needlestack, the podcast for professional online research. I'm your host, Shannon Reagan.
And I'm Aubrey Byron. Today we're discussing some recent tests by Bellingcat on using AI for OSINT.
That's right. And joining us for that discussion is Bellingcat's Summer Fellow, Dennis Kovtun, to talk about the research he performed during the program. So Dennis, could you start us off by telling us a little bit about the research you performed while at Bellingcat and that inspired your tests?
So I was in Bellingcat for 4 months after I finished J school. And what inspired me to do these tests, ironically enough, was my inexperience with open source research and open source journalism and all things OSINT. Because while I was aware and knew what Bellingcat was doing, what open source research was, it doesn't mean that I had a great degree of experience with it. And so I thought, could some of these tasks in open source research be automated? Things like geolocation, for example, or chronolocation. Could artificial intelligence do it? Because AI is all the hype now, that AI is going to take our jobs, AI here, AI there, AI is doing such cool things. And so I decided to put it to the test and see how well it coped with the tasks that I set it. And I've done 2 articles on it, 2 bits of research. The first one being when I tasked AI chatbots Bing and Bard to geolocate images. And the second one was when I fed a large number of AI-generated images and real images into an AI image detector called AI or not, and asked it to identify whether they were real or generated by AI. And from where I stand now, I was not super impressed with how AI was working on either of those 2 tests.
And in what ways did the AI you tested excel, and what were its biggest shortcomings?
I'll start with the AI detector. AI image detector performed very well when it was given high quality images. So when I downloaded Midjourney images in large file size, about 2 to 3 megabytes in PNG format, then it had very high success rate. In fact, pretty much 100% success rate when it comes to AI images. And it also was pretty good at identifying real images with some shortcomings. But these are ideal conditions when you have a large file size and high quality image. In real world conditions, you generally have an image that is not super high quality and that is really compressed.
Yeah.
And so when I compressed these images, when I started feeding into AI detector small files that were something like 300, 500 kilobytes, then it started making mistakes. So I think that particular tool, AI or not, it does have a room for development because now it performs well in very ideal conditions, really. But if it does manage to successfully extract data even from compressed images, then I think it will actually be it will set itself apart from other tools such as other AI detectors, because other AI detectors have not excelled in identifying even large file size, very 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 high quality ideal conditions images. As for chatbots, I honestly speaking can't really say that they excelled in identifying locations of the images that I took. And the images that I gave chatbots, they can be very easily geolocated manually. I just wanted to test if chatbots could geolocate those images at all. And
Mhm.
what I found is that chatbots try to replicate the steps that human researchers do, tries to mimic them, imitate them, but they don't manage to do that particularly successfully. They don't see what's in the image. They don't have this capability to analyze what's in the image, and they tend to see things in the photographs that are not there, and it tends to imagine things that do not exist in the real world. For example, when I was tasking it to geolocate one of the images that I took in Edmonton, where I'm right now, it stated that it was near a space research center. Well, I looked it up where that space research center was because the name of it looked a bit sketchy. And
Mhm.
in fact, that particular that particular facility does exist, but it exists in Vancouver, thousands of kilometers away from here.
Oops. Yeah, that was a fascinating article. I think the other one on using AI to recognize AI, AI generated images, it was also fascinating, and that seems to be such a need right now with the volume of content being put out by AI. In terms of AI recognition, how do you see this being incorporated in OSINT due to the shortcomings or reliability issues?
Well, one thing that for me at least, when I finish those tests, is my skepticism of AI tools increased significantly.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I think those tools definitely have their place because you can't manually identify every single AI image. Sometimes it may not be possible to identify AI images unless you are an expert in a very particular field. For example, when I was testing AI or not tool, I generated in Midjourney several abstract paintings, and
Hmm.
and to me they look like abstract paintings you see in your local museum.
Yeah, great.
I'm not I'm not an abstract art specialist, and so I would not be able to distinguish between them.
Right.
And so that's one area where I think that goes beyond typical classical open source research or OSINT the way we think about it now, because Bellingcat is known for its Russia-Ukraine investigations, for example.
Hmm.
But it goes beyond that. For
Yeah.
example, if I'm investigating art fraud or something along these lines, then I want my AI detector to be accurate because at this point, and that's an area for future research, we don't even know if experts in those fields will be able to successfully identify AI generated images, and that they will be able to distinguish the work of a human from the work of a robot,
Yeah.
so that's one area, but also in more serious things. I read just a few days ago that for example in Spain there is a pretty significant scandal now going on because some schoolgirls had their faces superimposed onto AI generated doubles in pornographic videos.
Oh my God.
So that is very concerning. That is very serious, and so it's criminal conduct anyway, but I think it will have implications for legal profession, for example. If you do a
Yeah.
criminal trial or into what is effectively child porn, and
Hmm.
uh, and uh, and then identifying if it's a fake in which the person in question has been defamed, but not in fact has been filmed engaging in
Yeah.
such activities,
Yeah.
or it's this, so from
Hmm.
that perspective, I think AI detectors need to improve their accuracy, absolutely, because because at this point of time I do not know if there are other tools that do not use machine learning, that do not use these neural networks, that can successfully identify such images. So from this perspective, I'm not thinking about it in terms of, oh well, AI detectors, yet another gimmick that generates lots of false positives. It's not a good thing that it generates lots of false positives at this point of time, particularly when we deal with compressed images. As for geolocation, I am not sure at this point if AI chatbots are capable of successfully geolocating images, of working with images in their current form. Maybe at the next iteration, maybe when they are redeveloped, then maybe. Because right now they have learned from the internet, which they scrub. That's how they learn these chatbots. How to they learn the steps that open source researchers take. They understand how to mimic them, but they can't do it accurately. They hallucinate all the time, and they require excessive prompting. When I gave them the images to geolocate, those images were A, they were in ideal conditions, B, they can be geolocated manually, and third thing, I also gave chatbots the general location of the place already.
Yeah.
I gave them the name of the city where I took it. I didn't just say, well, that's the image. The image, I don't know anything about it. I want to know where it is. I gave chatbots the name of the city. That this image is located was taken somewhere in Edmonton, and this image was taken somewhere in Ottawa. So it knew that, and that considerably already narrowed the search area. But when I tested aspects of how it was working with those images, for example, on one photo that I took, there is a building with several very visible logos on it, corporate logos, and so I downloaded those logos from the internet and fed them separately, those logos, into chatbots, and asked them to identify what companies did these logos belong to, and it was neither Bard nor Bing were able to successfully identify those logos, which were very simple. These are big companies that those logos belong to. They're not at all obscure.
Yeah, you think about how even just like a reverse image search of the logo, which it's telling you that it's, doing this type of work. It's capable of doing it, but it doesn't necessarily do it for like portions of images maybe. But yeah, it's interesting where it comes up short.
Corporate logos, it didn't identify them. It didn't identify them. It hallucinated all of them when I gave them all of them. 100% failure rate in corporate logo identification.
Well, going back to sort of the AI or not, did you yourself find any tells for differentiating human-made images from AI?
Midjourney is pretty good at generating realistic images, I must say. I don't think we are right now still in the world where AIs generate strange shapes where people have 6 fingers or an odd number of teeth or something like that. So honestly, I think AI has improved from that. From that point, it's become better, but it doesn't mean that it's perfect, and it's perfect in its imitation of real photographs or real paintings. I generated 100 images in Midjourney. After generating 100 images and looking at them for so long, honestly, I can kind of instinctually identify if the image has been generated by AI or not, because Midjourney, while it's trying to imitate real things, it's trying to imitate real photographs, real paintings, real drawings, I think it still has a certain style that you become used to when you look at those images. So for anybody who just wants to train themselves kind of by rote to identify AI images, that's what I suggest they do. Generate 100 images in Midjourney, spend enough time looking at them, and you will be in pretty good shape, I must say. But the tells for me when I was looking at those images were several things. For older photographs, for imitations of older photographs, it it was shiny eyes, for example. They're like beady, shiny eyes, and that was strange, as if light
I
was
love
being
this.
reflected, as if light was being reflected off them. And of course, that's not what you'd see
Hmm.
in a real photograph. And also, in general, these imitations of older photographs of paintings, for example, they look just way too perfect. In the real data set
Hmm.
that I used 20 paintings from the Renaissance period by great masters, for example. And I asked Midjourney to recreate those paintings effectively. I took the descriptions of those paintings from the museums that own them, and I fed those descriptions into Midjourney. So I effectively recreated those paintings. And the way I looked at them, the way they looked those imitations, they looked as if they were painted yesterday. There were no cracks.
Hmm.
There was no darkened varnish on those paintings. There were no little imperfections. There were absolutely the way they just looked was very much perfect, and that's not what you'd see in real world conditions either. Even if the painting from hundreds of years ago is very well restored, it had a lot of work done on it, and it received high quality scanning. Still, it's not what you're gonna see. And so that was the second thing for me when it came to uh, real to paintings, for example. As for photographs, there were several tells that we have been aware of for a while, and AI image generators still have not fully resolved this issue. For example, the image of a city, or of the just of the street. If you narrow it in and zoom it in and look at for example the window, the shop windows, you see that the titles are just written in gibberish. It's just a set of letters that is not
Yeah.
is not found in any language, really. So that's another tell. I
Hmm.
think, yeah, people just need to examine those images pretty closely, and think what may be off with those images. And the same comes to AI generated images of people, because those images looked way too perfect. And it's not an insult, not an offense to anybody, but every single person has some imperfection in them. Whereas if you show, as AI does, as Midjourney does at this point of time, an individual who is extremely beautiful, with no imperfections whatsoever, with nothing about them that may betray the fact that they're real. Well, then you may start thinking maybe that is a procedurally generated image based on those thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions photographs that Midjourney ingested into it, and took out these top traits out of them.
Yeah. It's interesting how much maybe we just don't even realize like the context of our human intelligence that we bring to looking at images. Like there's just this little, icky feeling that something doesn't feel right when you're looking at an AI generated image. That little things like you kind of have to put your art dealer hat on. Like, what about this isn't in the real world? What is not worn? Where is the dust and dirt and specks and grime and things like that? Yeah. put your human hat on to be good at it.
Absolutely. For me, looking at those images, particularly those that had people in them, I would really compare them to sort of uncanny valley feeling that you get
Hmm.
when you look at not very well done CGI in movies. So
Yeah.
anybody wanting to experience that sort of effect and learn how to um, you know how to critically look at such images and have this uncanny valley feeling and instinct. Well, like the best thing I can compare it to is Cats the musical, and
I was going to say,
and
watch
you can
Polar Express.
and so I think people would do well if they didn't buy into the hype
Hmm.
of AI, because at the end of the day, what we have right now is not real artificial intelligence. It's neural networks, it's machine learning, it's deep learning, but
Hmm.
these tools are not sentient. They operate according to procedural software that they're based on, and so I think at this point of time, the whole term artificial intelligence is more marketing than what we in fact have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the problem with using it, as we found when we were testing it for writing, is that if you are skilled in what you're asking it to do, then the excessive prompting, all of the time it takes is not really worth it. But if you're not skilled, it can be helpful, but you also won't be able to fact check it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to writing, for example, and that's one of the things that I discovered when I was doing AI or not article. The company that owns ChatGPT shut down their own AI detector because it gave so many false positives. It was
Yeah.
so inaccurate.
Not
But
effective.
uh,
Yeah.
but again, and I think the test that I've done on images and the the older controversy over AI detectors that identify AI generated written texts. I think it just shows that also from time to time, I think we need to give people more grace and not be too suspicious of people, that they used AI to just cheat, because we have heard that, for example, in academia, uh, AI detectors became really controversial when
Hmm.
students got accused of cheating and did not have a lot of recourse there, and basically were trying to prove that they're not a camel, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Putting faith in yet more AI, to weed out cheaters. Like nothing's perfect. You just have to use your best judgment.
Absolutely. It was with written assignments, but for example, if we use the case of academia, uh, academic institutions offer fine arts programs, and
Hmm.
what these controversies when students got accused of cheating on their essays, for example. Well, what prevents right now a fine arts student from being accused on using Midjourney uh, to generate their term assignment, and instead of taking the images themselves or doing the painting themselves, uh, that they use Midjourney to do it? What prevents them from being accused that they use Midjourney to do that? I
Yeah.
don't think anything right now, that there is any safeguard right now.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to pivot a little bit to talk about Bellingcat, obviously a notorious organization in some rights. We're big fans on the show. We discussed the We Are Bellingcat book at the end of last season. Could you just tell us a little bit of what it was like working for Bellingcat and doing this research with them?
The position that I got there was pretty unique. So internships and fellowships is something that Bellingcat is only starting to do. Hopefully, they'll do more of them.
Hmm.
And just off the bat, to anybody who's listening, who's in grad school or upper year of the undergraduate, and is thinking of getting into open source research, write to them and offer them what you've got, and maybe, maybe
Mhm.
you'll go from there, because Bellingcat is in many ways a really unique organization, not just in terms of what they do, but also how they operate. I was working for them remotely for the whole time I was with them, and it's a lot of work in Bellingcat is kind of choosing your own adventure. You do what you think you're good at, and you do what you want to do really, and you have time to do it.
Hmm.
In 4 months, I wrote those two articles, but the reason my output seemed not super impressive, 2 articles in 4 months, is because such work is really labor intensive. You spend
Hmm.
lots of time doing this research and lots of time putting it together, lots of time thinking about it. And you can do many things there. The good thing about open source research is that it's a very unrestricted term. You can do pretty much anything with open source, as long as you already have what you need for it somewhere. It's stashed somewhere in the corner of the internet, and just waiting to be found, to be discovered.
Hmm.
So you don't need to do interviews, for example, for it. You don't need to do what people do in more typical journals, and what I'm doing now,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
And I found the environment in Bellingcat very supportive of creative work. You are encouraged to ask for help. You are encouraged to exchange ideas with people, and I very much appreciated it. In some organizations, some more old-fashioned organizations, shall we say, sometimes people, particularly if they're new ones, they are they're not they're not encouraged to ask for help, and they're expected to know to know a great deal about this work, at least enough to do most of what they're tasked to do completely by themselves. But open source research doesn't work like this. It's constantly finding new things, and it's constantly looking for new ways of doing things, and it's really being creative with what you've got, and with what you're working on. And so I very much appreciated being able to write a Slack message to pretty much anybody in that
Hmm.
organization and tell them that's what I think, that's what I'd like to do. Any advice here? Any suggestions here? They very much appreciated that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, and I think in that industry too, which I also came from originally, not a lot of publications have the time or really just the money to let you spend a couple months on a really deep dive investigative project. They just
Oh
can't
yeah, oh yeah,
afford the staff for that. So,
absolutely. I work in traditional journalism now, and the difference is extraordinary. The turnaround time for an article or a radio news piece in traditional journalism is about a day, sometimes less. But in Bellingcat, it can take many months to do this piece of research. But for a good reason, because as I said, such work is really labor intensive, and you spend time thinking about it. You spend time planning how you want to write it, how you want to communicate your findings, and and it does take a lot of work, particularly if you go into a pretty uncharted territory with open source research, which you often do. Like AI, that I've done the work on AI. Uh, Not very many people did it before, and I'm proud to say that what I've done with chatbots was something truly original. And so a lot of it is like academic research, particularly in the sciences, I'd say,
Hmm.
where you conduct your investigation, where you conduct your research and you become an expert on it, an expert in a very niche thing, in a very niche field, but you become an expert on it because you know it best, and because you've done the most work on it and you've done the original work on it. That's the important bit.
Yeah, I constantly find the blending of investigative journalism and OSINT really fascinating in this industry.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no surprise. We keep coming back to it. We love it. Well, as we wrap up, any parting thoughts for the audience, especially those that may be newer to OSINT or even self taught?
Bellingcat has got a Discord that I strongly suggest that you join if you are interested in this type of thing. Uh, it's got a pretty large community of people who are just interested in this and who do OSINT as a hobby. Yeah, so that's the thing. That's, I'd say, for anybody interested in more professional work in open source research, that Discord should be your first point of call. Uh,
Mhm.
I also I also would like to say that what I saw, what I witnessed, is that sometimes open source work can be pretty resource intensive as well. Not just time consuming, but also resource intensive. So Ballingcat has got a Patreon, and if you are interested in this type of stuff, then you may help them out a little bit if you want.
Mhm.
But I'd like to return to people my age and people in my stage in life, so to speak. I'm 25 years old. I finished grad school in May this year, and
Congratulations.
thanks. And I'd say sometimes I think people who are interested in OSINT may be a bit intimidated by the
Mhm.
complexity of it, by the amount of technical skills that is necessary to do this type of work. And I was fairly intimidated. I was overjoyed when I got this research fellowship with Bellingcat, but at the same time I thought, I'll need to do geolocation, I'll need to do chronolocation, I'll
Yeah.
need to do all of these things. I sort of understand how it works, but I have not really done this. So am I going to embarrass myself, or am I going to how am I going to make the best time of it?
Mhm.
And and I'd say after I've done a bit of it for 4 months, that my fears were not exactly warranted. That
Mhm.
that you can find a niche, you can find an area in open source research that does not require you to have this complex technical skill set. And even with geolocations, if you start doing them, you're gonna get better at them. I was
Mhm.
I was pretty hopeless in the beginning, and but I got better. My skill level at doing geolocations, for example, at this point of time, I'd estimated it at being about intermediate to higher. So I can geolocate most images at this point of time. Some images are more complex, of course, and more difficult to do. They have fewer attributes,
Mhm.
but given enough time, I can work with them. So
Yeah.
so I would really encourage people to get into it if you are interested in open source work, and get on Discord on Bellingcat's Discord, where people from time to time collaborate even
Yeah.
on investigative research, and Bellingcat uses this these collaborations on Discord to inform their own work that is a professional published work. And
Mhm.
you know people who are finishing grad school or finishing upper year undergraduate and have something to offer to them. I don't think you can just be gung ho and say, oh well, I graduated, and I'd like to have an internship with you. You need to prepare for that. You need to work towards it. When I got a fellowship with Bellingcat, I was not completely new to open source intelligence. I've taken a training course with them. I've read about them. I knew what they were doing. So be really informed about this field, about this area of research slash journalism.
Mhm.
But if you have something to offer to them, uh, you, who knows? You might have a good chance of succeeding. and working with that organization for a little bit, which I again strongly suggest, because it's very good for your resume, it's good for your portfolio, but it's
Mhm.
also being able to say and knowing that you've truly done something really unique. And not that
Mhm.
many organizations offer that. If you work with your local news, for example, because I'm a journalist, I return to local news now. After you've done a certain number of articles, for example, on, say, local crime or local traffic or local happenings or whatnot,
Yeah.
then it kind of becomes formulaic. Not to say that it's not important, it is, but there is a formula that you follow, and there is not much originality that you can find in those stories. With open source research, if you want to be original, if you want to do unique work, there is an avenue for that. There is an opportunity for that.
Yeah.
Well,
Great
that's a
advice.
great note to end on. And thanks again, Dennis, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Very much
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
And if you liked what you heard, you can view transcripts and other episode info on our website, authenticate.com/needlestack. That's authentic with the number 8.com/needlestack. And be sure to let us know your thoughts on X at needlestackpod. We'll see you next time with more and the latest in OSINT. Stay tuned.